Okay, so I'm going to be breaking down the Copland OS Boot-up recreation video that I did, and this is what the actual file and node graph looks like for this. And this is what it looks like after the fact. It is a little laggy, but overall, it is the animation. And I'm going to basically talk on how I did this. So I'm going to be working kind of backwards, because that would be kind of just the way that I'm thinking about doing that now. But overall, it starts off with the different types of text and stuff where that's all keyframed using a instance rectangle, because that is a mask. So that mask goes down and then shows up. The text is animated upwards alongside it, and that is basically how I have that. So here's some of like the general colors. This is done using mostly shading, how to get the text and then outline too. So this is how that's done. This is done by having the reference of the original and then me just copying the colors using the eyedropper. Then I have the secondary thing, and that's also similar. That is just a different, brighter color. And then the mask here, as you can see. And these rectangles are animated to show the final scene, and that is done like this. So obviously it is a little bit laggy, but overall this is kind of what it looks like. So this is what it looks like. It is very laggy, but here we go. So that is the kind of animation as it is shown, and the text is just added on to here. The base merge animation without the text, pretty much in full. It is very kind of annoying on how slow this is loading, but this is how it's done. So most of this stuff is using the pivot and transform, a lot of this angling, and then we have the dots that go down, and this is just by looking back and forth between the original animation and then recreating it as accurate as possible. Now there are some errors in this that are different from the original, but I will get into that kind of later on. The base animation is mostly mirrored a lot of the time. So this is a background, that's what is colored. Then I have an row dilate that makes it smaller, and then we have another polygon that is a copy. So actually, as you can see, this started with this polygon, and then I copied and duplicated it and added it to here. So and that one was a darker color for a background, and then I had an row dilate, then a blur, and then a merge. So it has this kind of rounded look. Now, I could do this in many different ways, but this was the way that I chose to during this time. And then I have a drop shadow that kind of adds a little bit more differences, and I will be overviewing kind of some of the blurs so you can see how that is done over here. And then the aerodilate, and then the polygon. So, and then we have the transform that is the animation. So it is animated across from here, and that just comes in. If we see the transform, this is where it ends up stopping, but this is where it starts. And we have that, and then we have a mirror that mirrors it, and that is kind of how it's all working. So here's the actual full transform. As we can see, the animation is at this point. You can see that on the timeline, and then it animates in, and due to the mirror being the thing that is used, this is what that looks like, and then it is merged on top of all of this. Then we have the main dot. This will be duplicated throughout the entire thing, and that is really just, again, an ellipse and then another ellipse done with the same method with the row dilate and all that. And or just one ellipse has a clamp to it, as seen here. So if we look at that, there is the background ellipse, and then one ellipse is faded off and add a different color background. Overall, it's done very similarly to on how all these ones are done. Then we have the side dots, and these are also animated using a transform, where these have been one has been animated to that, and then there is a mirror that connects to that, and then that drop shadow is added afterward. This is also a copy of the same dot. It's just animated differently, and that's all that it is done. And those kind of fade off and slow down. That is mostly just done with the spline. The main symbol is constructed like this, where it has a lot more, as you can see. This has some fade offs as through a mask that masks the original, which is this. This is what that symbol looks like. It is done similarly, a row dilate, ellipse, all that stuff, and that is just done with pretty much multiple ellipses and then some polygons that are mirrored and then added to the end. Then in a row dilate to add some form, blur, and then we have a copy of the same string down here that ends up mirroring and then going to a darker background, and then they're merged together to add that kind of styling. Then we have the another ellipse, the background ellipse over here, and that one is just done similarly, but that one's just connected together and a little bit more larger. And then we have that, we have the rectangle masking that off to give off the fade off for the text. And then we have the glowing ring, which is done with all these. So we have center, ring. These are really just like all of that stuff. This is just all created by observing the original, and then it has the fade off for that. So a lot of these are just copied, but these are custom named. I changed the name. They're probably just background and polygons. That's all they are. Then here is the ripple, which is actually kind of a darker blue, and then it's just added over the course and then multiplied with a color corrector that darkens it, because when it was merged, it adds this kind of darker haze to the background, which adds a lot to that. This is thoroughly animated and morphed over the course of the animation. As we can see, the blend and all that stuff is shifted. This zooms out. Then we have the merge that animates here. This is just, as you can see, this is what that looks like. And it is larger, and it just shrinks, and that's really what all I'm doing alongside with the blend as it fades in. So that is how that's done. Then we have the ripple. This, but it is animated using the where is that, blend, and then that is done that way. So we have multiple copies of the ripple background, as you can see here. This is where that is done. We have the color corrector. The merge is the one that does the animation for this, and this is what that looks like. And then that one is apply mode screen, and then that's why I have it as such a dark color, because that's how it looks like due to the overlay mode being done. And then that fades off, and then we have the secondary copy of the ripple being here, which is one that's just freestanding that stays there. So when it merges, it looks like as if it's staying there. I could do this way more optimally, but I just didn't know how to do that at the time. That would just be doing different keyframes. So this is definitely not the most correct way if you were to create this. Obviously, the original does actually have more of a button-like appearance for the larger background, but that is how this ended up being. And then we have the background, and that one's just simply a base. And this is done very, very similarly to how I did the title card animation. But yeah, that is the complete breakdown on that and looking at it from now the correct way, we have the background, then we have the ripple animation done here, and then we have the differences in the ripple that stands the main dots that stay here and transform at the start. As we can see, this main dot is the starting point, and that one just animates down and then disappears. Then we have the main dot, then we have the ripple that stays here. Then we have the glowing ring that is animated and added on. So I really did start this off mostly just doing it one by one. So I started from the beginning with the dot animating in, and then I added more and more with the main symbol, which is done here. And if we see this, this is how this one's done. And then we have that fade in with this, and then that animation, and that's how that's done. And then we have the drop shadow that is added to give form to the symbol, just to make it pop a little bit more. Then we have the side dots, which animate in, and that is done by having this thoroughly animate down, and then these kind of form the two ends, and then they stop. And this is just edited using the spline with the animation. Once that is done, and then all these just animate in. Then we have the top dot that is animated going above there. So this is done and then animates up, and that is what this one does. And this is animated using the transform. This is animated using the transform, and then it begins here, and once that's faded up, it goes upward, and that is how that one's done. So that's how this continues. We have that, and then these animate from the side and do their animation, and then we have the text added onto it, showing up at the end. And then we have a slight color corrector to get the color to be a little bit more correct or more hued. This is more vibrant and blue. This one's a little bit more teal that adds into that. And then that is the final composition as we see it animate in. So overall, that is how I did the Copland OS Boot-up recreation animation when I wanted to try to recreate this effect roughly a year ago now. No, like pretty much a year ago now. I know this video has taken a very long time to finally be done, but overall, that's how I did it. That is how I made this animation. And yeah, I think there could be ways that I could improve this. For example, some of the inaccuracies would be not having the scan lines, but that was mostly due to my own choice when I went into the animation, because I was already animating it in the wrong aspect ratio. So I was trying to do a more newer version. The things that I do view as genuine inaccuracies is, one, the text is very, very, very close. It's not exact though. This is based off of, this is one that is very mimicking the other one, but I think I got this from the LibreOffice suite because that is what I use for a script program. That's probably how I got this text on my computer. And the text that is being used is Lucida calligraphy. I don't think that this is the original text. There have been many moments where in many of the recreations that I've done, whilst them being very, very similar to the original, they are not exact because either the text that is used is no longer on most computers, or it is something that is bought, and I just don't have access to it. Overall, that is one inaccuracy, and also the ripple, the thing that's named as this faded background that is a darker blue. This is actually more or less a button shape compared to the original, and I will have that popped up in the corner. It is more of a button kind of aspect. It has a lot of shading to it, and it looks like a 3D graphic. I think there would be ways to create it in theory that would be done using a plane and a mask in 3D, which was my original plan when I first talked about this pretty much a year ago. I just haven't been that interested in doing recreative motion graphics from other shows for a very long time now, so much so that I haven't really wanted to talk about this, and it took an entire year to actually get to just wanting to explain this. So I apologize for that, but overall, the inaccuracy is that button kind of look to it, and that's one inaccuracy, and then technically the aspect ratio and the scan lines that would be done. One thing that I was a long time ago, roughly a year ago, planning with alongside this animation was creating the main desktop screen, but that one involves a lot more moving parts and a lot more eyeballing, and I am frankly dauntedly terrified of doing that for now. And yeah, so that's one of those things that I've noticed. I am not interested in really recreating this effect again. But if I ever were to, I think the main focus would be, instead of using the tilting and panning options that I did for a lot of the starting animation that does the angling with the kind of water drop effect that kind of pans into this, even though that it's very accurate, it would be way more better to use a 3D plane and do this in the 3D viewer and have that be animated that way, alongside a little bit more organization when it comes to this. Even if this is very simplistic, this is not a very accurate example. There could have been a lot of moments where I just had this one ripple and I just had different transform nodes being the thing that drive the animation for it. That would have been probably more accurate to do. But overall, that's kind of the little corrective measures that I would think people, if they were wanting to try to recreate this, should be looking into. Do a little bit more 3D when it comes to this, and just look at the original animation and try to mimic it as accurately as possible. The real only measure on how accurate it would be is, one, the accuracy and knowledge that you have in the program that you're using to recreate it, as well as the amount of time that you have. And this is mostly why I just don't tend to do these kind of things. Lately, I've been kind of just focused more on trying to do animation, which isn't bad. But overall, I've been kind of failing on that in my personal opinion. But overall, I want to try to get back into doing some form of fusion motion graphics again, and I want to try to upgrade that. But until I can get the motivation to be able to do that and the inspiration to do that, then that will be mostly a very trialist path, very hard to do. But in any case, this is how I did that, and if you enjoyed the video, you can go check out more of the episodes that I have for my SK Learns series that I've been doing for a decent chunk of time. And if you are interested, I suggest that you go check out some of my animations that I've been working on, mostly in the Blood series, as well as the newer file called the animation SK Animations. That one is mostly just random animations that I'm thinking on doing, and or just random projects that I wanted to do that would not relate to the Blood series in any way. And those are just random kind of MISC animation folder that I have been working on. Note, somewhere around, at some point during this week, I will be doing a SK Talks video that would just mostly just kind of giving a little bit more insight and some updates on some of the ideas that I have going forward for this channel. So if you're interested, stay tuned. And in any case, this has been Skorsen. Hope you have a good day and or night, and always remember to keep creating. Goodbye.